Basic Skills Day 11 is review. What I'd like you to do is pause the video right now and try all of these problems. Then, once you've done the problems, restart the video and check your answers. You can scroll through the answers, and as you're scrolling through, if you're getting them correct, skip forward on the video. If you're not getting them correct, then you should stop and listen to the explanations of each problem. So pause the video, try the problems, then restart the video to check your answers and get further explanations on ones that you missed. Okay, here are the first set of problems and the answers. So remember, you're subtracting, you're taking a negative loss or a loss of 3 yards and you're subtracting 7 more, which gives you a total loss of 10 yards. Number 2, start at 5 degrees outside. Now you drop 9 degrees, the temperature is -4. So a lot of times working with and thinking about these as models can really help you. So if you look at number 3, you start out with $2. You thought you lost 6, but you're taking away a loss, which means you are adding in that number to give you a total of 8. Remember, subtracting can always be thought of as adding the opposite. So in the problem above, 5 minus 9 can be changed to 5 plus -9. So now that gives you -4. Question number 4, you're taking away a loss of 10. So again, add the opposite, which now gives you -4 plus 10 is +6. Again, think about it. You owed your parents $4. Now you're adding $10, and so after you pay them back, you have 6. There's lots of different models to think of. Now, when we get to 5 through 8, you're multiplying and dividing. Remember, if your two signs are different, your answer will always be negative. If your two signs are the same, it will always be positive. So in number 5, you're looking at a positive times a negative, so you're going to get a negative answer, -15, and you just multiply or divide as you normally would. So 5 times -3 gives you -15. In the second, number 6, you have a negative times a negative. Notice that you have a positive answer. And of course, we don't need to put that positive sign in there because we already know that that is understood. But 6 times 4 is 24. Question number 7, you have 36 divided by -9. 36 divided by 9 is 4. Now you have a positive divided by a negative. The signs are different, and that's why the answer is -4. And last but not least, number 8, you have a negative divided by a positive. Again, the signs are different. It will be negative. Then 12 divided by 4 is 3. Okay, let's talk about 0 when that's involved. Well, if you're just adding 0 to any number, it is the number itself, so it's just 8. Multiplying by 0, anything times 0 will always be 0. Now here's where it gets tricky on these two. If the 0 is on the bottom of the fraction, it's undefined. Or if I rewrote this as 8 divided by 0, that's what that means. When 0 comes second in the problem or under the fraction, then it is also undefined. But in number 11, 0 divided by 8 is 0. Moving on to fractions, our fraction work here. So when you are adding or subtracting fractions, you always need a common denominator. So find a number that both 5 and 8 go into. In this case, I would choose 40. Then 5 times 8 gives you 40, so multiply the numerator by the same value, and 8 times 4 is 32. Changing our second fraction into 40ths, I would have to multiply by 5 on the top and bottom. That would give me 15 40ths. Now when I add and have a common denominator, you keep the same denominator. Remember, you went to all that work to get the common denominator, so keep it. Now just add the two numerators, and that is going to give us 47 40ths. Question 14, multiplying. When you multiply fractions, you don't need a common denominator. So you just multiply straight across, and you get 4 times 3, that gives you 12, and 5 times 8 gives you 40. We always reduce our fraction. So 4 goes into each of these, so I'm going to divide by 4, which is going to give me the 3, divide by 4, which is going to give me the 10, so 3/10. Now, when you are dividing by fractions, now you have to do keep, change, flip. So you keep the first fraction the same, you change the division to multiplication, and then you flip that second fraction to give you 8/3. Now you do the same thing we did in that last problem. You multiply straight across, which gives you 32. Multiply the two denominators, which gives you 15. Here are more complicated fractions. Remember, before you can calculate with a fraction, if you have a mixed number, you need to change it to improper. You do that by multiplying the whole number times the denominator and adding the numerator. So 3 times 5 is 15, plus 2 is 17/15. Now I'm going to be taking that second fraction and adding it, but now I need a common denominator. So I have to change my denominators here. So what I'm going to change them to is tenths. So I have to multiply by 2. That gives me 34/10. Multiply the second fraction by 5, which gives me 5/10, and then add the two numerators to get 39. And again, once you went to all that worked, to get the common denominator, leave it, 39/10. You do not need to change improper fractions into mixed numbers. All you need to do is make sure it's reduced. And in the last question here, make sure you remember to put a 1 under any whole numbers when you're calculating with fractions, then follow the same steps. I do not need to get a common denominator, but with division, I change it. Remember, keep, change, flip. So now I multiply. 2 times 1 is 2, and 5 times 4 is 20. I reduce my fraction, and that equals 1/10. Order of operations, that was tricky on the quiz, so listen to these explanations if you got these wrong. The first thing you do, besides parentheses and exponents, is now we have to do multiplication and division in order, whatever occurs first, left to right. So in this case, I would have to do the 24 divided by 8 first to get 3. Then I'm going to fill in the other values I didn't calculate yet. Then the next thing I'm going to do is the multiplication, which gives me 15. So now I get 7 plus 15 is my 22. Next example, no parentheses or exponents, no multiplication or division either. Oh, I'm sorry, yes there is. So the next thing I need to do is the multiplication. The only multiplication is that 2 times 6 to get 12. Rewrite the other numbers and symbols, and now you have the addition and subtraction only left, and again, that is done left to right. So I have to work left to right, which means I have to do 5 minus 12 is what comes next. And that gives me -7 plus 8, and now that gives me a +1. In this last question, what you are going to do is look for any parentheses, exponents, etc. Here's a parenthesis, so I have to do that first. 9 minus 5 is 4. So now I still have a parenthesis, but that's just showing that that number is being squared. So now I need to do this next. I have to do the 4 squared next. That gives me 16. Rewrite the other numbers and symbols, and then continue. Next, I have some multiplication and division to take care of. So the next thing I'm going to do here is this 16 divided by 8, which gives me 2. Now I have 3 plus 2, which gives me 5. Solving. When you solve, okay, first thing you do is look for any like terms, but those like terms have to be on the same side as the equal sign. If you notice in this second example over here, they are on opposite sides, so I cannot combine them until I move one to the other side. But going back to 21, I'm going to combine like terms. 2x and 4x gives me 6x. These are also just plain old numbers, so 5 minus 9 is -4. Now that equals 12. Now from here, the steps are pretty simple to solve. I'm going to add 4 to each side. That gives me 6x equals 16. Now I divide by 6, and that gives me x equals 16/6, which again I would always reduce because I can divide both by 8. No, excuse me, I can divide both. Oh, there's a, I see why. I miscopied that. Be careful. This is 16/6, but again, I can divide both by 2, which gives me 8/3. Notice again, like I pointed out, this time, these are on opposite sides of that equal sign right here. So I cannot add those together to get 6x. So what I'm going to do is add or subtract some of the x's to get them to the other side. 2x minus 2x adds up to 0. Now I have 5 minus 9, which is -4, equals 4x minus 2x gives me 2x plus 12. From here, again, it should be pretty straightforward. I need to get the numbers together. So I'm going to subtract 12 from each side so that my variable's on one side and my numbers are on the other. From here, I can divide by 2 to get 1x, and I get x equals -8. These two are a little more complicated, and a lot of people get mixed up on what to do here. Remember, our goal is to get this variable by itself. So what was done to the variable is it was divide by 5 and then subtract 7. So what I have to do is get this part by itself. And the last thing I did was subtract 7, so in this case I have to add 7 first. So now I get x divided by 5 is equal to 10. Now I have x divided by 5, I have to do the opposite, which is multiply by 5, and now I get x equals 50. And in question 24, now again, take a closer look. Again, I'm getting my variable by itself, but now my variable and subtract 7 is together. So I have to leave that alone until I get rid of divide by 5. So again, say what was done to x. X minus 7, then I divided by 5. The last thing I said was divide by 5, so that's the first thing I reverse by multiplying by 5. Now I get x minus 7 is equal to 15. Now I can simply add the 7 to each side and get x equals 22. All right, the inequalities. I'm just going to kind of explain these in general. Remember, if you have an open circle right here, then it's always less than. So open circles are for less than or greater than. Closed circle is for less than or equal to or greater than or equal to. Okay, so when I am writing this inequality for number 12, I can see that x is greater than, because it's going to the left, the numbers are bigger, it's greater than this number of -2. So when I'm writing an inequality like on 26, I start with the number that's on the number line as 11. Then I look at my x. Okay, how is x compared to 11? It is going to the left, so it's smaller. It's not equal to it because it's an open circle, so I leave it as less than. The other two problems are very similar, but again, notice that since this is shaded in, I have the equal with it. On the last two questions, notice that your values are between -2 and 4. So those are the numbers that I have. And then notice how I put my x in between it. Now, how do the x values compare to 4? They are less than or equal, so I fill that in. How do they compare to -2? They are greater than or equal. So notice the arrow doesn't always match depending on where the variable is. But if you just do this part of it first, right here, if you just compare it how it is to the number on the right, then you can just simply fill in the other symbol that matches it. Sometimes you have to remove the less than, depending on if it's an open circle. And then when you're graphing each inequality on a number line, here's how we do it. We start with the number right here, 6, and we draw a circle. Then we figure out that it's equal to, so we shade it in, and then we say x compares how to 6? X is greater than, the larger part is towards the x, so now I make my arrow go where the numbers are greater than that. Here, x is less than 3. Well, here's where 3 is. It's not equal to it, so it's only the numbers that are less than that. And again, think of this as x is in between these two numbers. So x has to be between -2 and 7. I can see that the 7 has an equal with it, so I shade it in, and now my values of x are in between. Hopefully that helped you review. Tomorrow will be the last piece for you if you want. It's an optional video for a quick little review before the test, just a couple extra questions. You can view that if you choose. But this is the end of our day 11 review.